Greetings, family. Welcome to Pan Africanism Towards Nationhood. You're here with Bomani Tyamba and Kala Genesis, and we're here to talk about Kala great historical novel. My good brother Kala Genesis. Always good to talk with you, man. The modern day scholar of Liberia, the man who literally put Liberia on the map online for more people to learn about the great historic journey of our ancestors. Color Genesis, brother. Let's get a good introduction from you, and let's talk about your novel and talk about why it's so important and why you have been one of the foremost scholar and foremost person connecting us to Liberia.
Okay, the reason my name is Dwayne Makala, aka the College Genesis. Um, I'm an author, right? Blogger, writer, thinker, philosopher, we call it, activist, black nationalist, and all these other things, black liberation, and all these things. I'm an Africanist, not just necessarily a Pan African. I'm an African. I mean, I believe in that we as black people are Africans, and whether we want to be an African nation or African ethnic group, whatever like that, I do believe that we're part of Black Africa, sub-Saharan Black Africa. So that's the base I'm coming with. Now, the whole purpose of the reason why I discovered Liberia was to answer a riddle, a question, a conundrum, right? When we look at Black American history, there's a piece of the puzzle that's missing. The part that's missing is the journey home. People tend to think of Black America as our origins began in America, so our origins and everything we're about concludes in America. And so, therefore, when I was younger, a kid, I used to always be curious about Africa. I always was curious to know that is there when I used to face racism, my parents moved us from the inner city to a predominantly white community, right? And the people used to be either they were nice to you because they felt sympathy for you or patronize you, or they outright hate you. The question I used to ask at a young age is this the way life's supposed to be? And I want people to think about this as I keep talking tonight, right? When you get called the N word and all this stuff like this, and you're going through racism and everything, there's two things you could do. You could just accept it as just a thing what you're supposed to do, or you could say, you know something, I think there's something better. Now, this leads me to why I do this book on Liberia and my take on why our ancestors went there to found the republic. And what does that got to do with us today? Now, every time I look around, I see black people always complaining about racism, white supremacy, and feeling second class, feel diminished. Now we see black people this same degradation of being powerless in an outsider in a white man's country. We have other people coming here from all over the world looking down on us. So I'm saying to myself, is that all there is? Is our story already written that everyone born with white skin or some other skin is superior to us? So the question is, why is that happening? It's because we bought into an idea that was a lie. The Declaration of Independence, where it says all men are created equal and endowed by creators and all stuff like this, was a lie. My goal is to prove once and for all that the Declaration of Independence, integration in America was always a lie, meant to deceive black people, keep us docile, and hoping for something that's never going to happen. So therefore, I learned about Liberia when I was in eighth grade. I learned that there was black people in America that went to they was reduced to one little paragraph in my history book in eighth grade history class. Said some black people went to Africa, formed the American colonization. So that's all I knew. That's when I first heard about Liberia. I was in eighth grade, so I left it alone. Over the years, I began getting more curious, and when I was in high school, Liberia popped up again. This time it was 1985 or 86, I remember right. The Duvaliers was fleeing Haiti, and the Republic of Liberia was going through elections or whatever like that, and they said that they would take Duvalier to be a leader. And that my classroom in high school was laughing about it. I was like, "Oh, Haiti and Liberia, these are two failed countries." When I was like, "What's so funny about Haiti? What's so funny about this country, Liberia? Oh, Liberia, blah blah blah." It was like a joke, you know. Liberia was like a running joke. So I was ashamed of the country. I was ashamed that I was told that it was a failed experiment, that black people in America went there. They went there with a slave mentality, tried to enslave the native people and all this kind of stuff like this, right? And then what happened was years later, I started studying the country a little more definitely. So I said to myself, something was not right about what I was told. So I began doing my research, right? And I found that Liberia had a strong connection to the Pan African world. There was leading Pan Africanists like Edward Wilmot Blyden, John Brown Westbrook, who was Jamaican, and Alexander Cromwell. All these people basically spoke highly of the country and everything. And so I said to myself, if if we're talking about Pan Africanism and Black nationalism, right? The ultimate goal of a black nation, of black people, is to have a nation of their own. Why would what's wrong with Liberia? So I began reading the country, studying a little more and stuff like that, and I found that, despite the fact that people talk about this, I realized that the identity of race was not in Africa at the time, right? We didn't become black people or conscious of our race until the socialization of slavery, right? So our ancestors, when they came back to Liberia to build a republic, right, they had that uh, mind of black country. And this is something different that you see in Africa, where Africans see themselves as tribe and tribalism and everything. So Liberia was an experiment to build a black pluralistic society where people, as long as you're black, we could be a people. Now that worked for the black people in Liberia that came from the West. They intermarry with each other, whether you're from the Barbados, South America, whatever like that, in Europe. They created the society, two societies. There was one indigenous society, and then there was another society that was indigenous adjacent society. Those are ones who basically became Liberians because they had a race and religious like Christianity, and they spoke English conscious, right? Then you had the Congo people who came from the high seas that settled there too. So when I found out that the Congo people who came there from recaptured slaves and settled there, I said, if the so-called American Liberians, right, which I was a term that wasn't used, was so oppressive, then why was the Congo people that were recaptured, right? Why did they assimilate so well with these people that came from America? And then I began to realize that what I was told was a lie. Well, it was a lie. That the people that came from America was a prejudice and they didn't assimilate with the native people or whatever like that. So I began doing my homework, right? In 18 By the time the 1870s were around, Liberia was becoming an up and coming country, right? It declared its independence in 1847 and it got recognition by the leading powers of the world: Britain, Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, and all these countries recognized the republic. That was very, very important, because then I realized that while most of the world was under colonial rule, this one little tiny piece of territory controlled by black men from the West was a recognized republic. That means through treaty and everything like that, they had a right to the privilege of sovereignty, raising taxes, protecting its border, expanding its border, having a military, having a navy. And I said to myself, wow. Hi, everybody. Welcome. When you basically talk about black people, you never hear the words like colonize, pioneer, expansion, manifest destiny. All those things are always attributed to the Chinese. I heard about it when they talked about the Genghis Khan. And I never, when you think about rulership, governance, and subjects to a state or citizens, stuff like that. That's something in our culture. That's something that basically all human beings are entitled to: government, citizenship, rule of law, protection under law, endowment by creator, all those beautiful things that the world says that every human being deserves. Freedom from fear. Then I realized that all those things are denied to Black America. For example, there were no Black people in America at the Declaration of Independence. There were no Black people in America at the Constitution. There were no Black people in America that basically signed the 13, 14, 15th Amendment. None of these things invited us as a human being, which we have every right to be, and say, do you guys want to be part of this society? We're not asked to be brought here. And then we were never really asked to be a part of society. Then when they did sort of make us society, they didn't give us the protections that you give a citizen. You make sure they have resources and everything like that to survive in a country if you want them to be part of the country. All these things showed me that America completely neglected Black America. Then when I heard about Liberia, right, I found that the Liberian government basically not only protected the people who came over there, they gave them land, they gave them business, loans, everything. And I said to myself, if I'm a Black man in the 19th century, would I stay in America, risk getting killed, lynched, hung, whatever like that, just for being trying to exercise my right as a man or human being with dignity, just for having my dignity, or can I go to a country that says in its constitution, like Hillary T, a man we shall live without dignity on this soil? I said when I read those words, I said, you know something, I'm sold on Liberia. So therefore, when I started studying Liberia capital, I said, you know something, this was always the answer to America. So in 2011, I formed a group called the Association of African Americans for Liberia to explore the possibility of Black people re-engaging Liberia for the future, reconnecting with the past, clear up some misunderstandings, and build a future in that republic. Because I think we owe it to our ancestors who founded the country. So therefore, in 2000, I formed that group on Facebook and a couple other sites and everything like that. So I talked about the association, and it grew. Beyond my wildest dreams, it grew. It caught on and grew. Then a year later, I said, you know something? I tried to look for books and novels on Liberia. I said, there's not one book or novel on Liberian history. There's no stories. What did they think? What did they eat? How did they interact? What was their happiness? What was their joys? So since there wasn't a book written on Liberia, I used to get mad. Where's the Black authors at? Then someone said to me, if there's no books and you complain about there's no books, why don't you write the book? I said, me, I'm not no author. Then I started reading about other people who basically said, you know something? I came across this article said, do you ever self-publish a book? So I read the thing. You know how easy to self-publish a book? And when I said I went to Libris.com, they sent me a little strip on how to self-publish a book and stuff like that. And I said to myself, okay, I want to write a book on Liberian history, right? So I discovered an incident that happened in 1878. It was called the Liberia Exodus Association of 1870, Liberia Exodus of 1878, which was probably the biggest event in Black history. I'm gonna read this from my back of my novel right here. It says the Liberia Exodus of 1878 was one of the biggest events in African American history. It certainly rivaled the Emancipation Proclamation and the end of slavery in the 19th century as the grand event and the most talked about until the coming of Marcus Garvey for some 40 years later. I hope to be able to write stories and historical fiction, bringing to life untold stories and events. These stories are part of the human experience. The characters in this book are not unlike any other people searching for freedom, dignity, and a better future. They found their version of America on the land of their ancestors. My next novel will be about the rise of the Empire of Mali in West Africa, which I'm working on. It will be the same. This time, it will be with all its fables, legends, battles, and everything. I hope you will enjoy Journey to the Promised Land, Voyage of the Bark Azor. I hope it will inspire others to write stories to share with the world. Now, in 1878, 1876 to be exact, Rutherford Hayes, there was a Hayes-Tillman compromise. You had Tillman and you had Rutherford Hayes. Rutherford Hayes was a guy, a Republican, and Tillman was a Democrat. The southern states starts filibustering, right? The appointment of Rutherford B. Hayes, right? And so therefore, the southern states said, well, if you guys want us to seat the new president, right, and avoid going to another civil war, you have to withdraw the Union troops from the South. So when they did that, Reconstruction ended, and black people were left in limbo. We were completely sold the idea that the South was going to be a new place because they had Union occupation troops all over the place. So when the Union troops withdrew from the South, the Southern races came back to power. And because the Republicans and the Democrats basically threw Black America on the bus, the leaders in Black America said it was time for us to part ways with America forever. So they formed the Liberia Exodus Society, right, in Charleston, South Carolina, and it was had throughout the United States. There were chapters and stuff like that throughout the United States, and they were going to basically purchase a fleet of ships, right, to begin the process of colonization of Africa. It was start with Liberia, and then there was going to there were other ones that wanted to go to the Congo, like George Washington Williams. Somebody you should look up, his exploration to the Congo. So, in other words, basically, the manifest destiny of the black man was America was to return to Africa, end slavery, and all the stuff like this, and colonize and build a new African empire. That was the beginning of the journey to the promised land, the voyage of the Bark Azor. That was going to be the first voyage, a maiden voyage, what was supposed to be hundreds of them. In fact, people don't understand that the Marcus Garvey movement was not started by Marcus Garvey. It was started by the Liberia Exodus Association. The Garveyites, the Exodus Association people, got together with Marcus Garvey and convinced him to reactivate this plan to resettle Liberia first and then the rest of Africa. So this wasn't something that started by Garvey. This was already in motion. In fact, the idea that we should return to Africa is probably the oldest ideology in Black America. It was around in the 1600s. The first Africans brought to the New World, right, that got educated, said, you know something, one day we're going to have to return to the continent and build Africa. That was like 200 years before Liberia was even thought about. So when the chance of Liberia came about in 1820, it was already something that was in the mind of most black people in America for 200 years, talked about, fabled about, and everything. Even some people did some plays and some scenarios about what a black republic in Africa would be like. So this idea of a black republic, this utopian black civilization that could strong enough to stand up to the West, been in the minds of Black America for 400 years. Black America is a birthplace of black nationalism and Pan-Africanism. Make no mistake, without Black America, this whole movement will collapse. Africa will collapse, everything, because this is a driving force. This is why they're trying to divide Black America from the rest of Africa, because this idea of black nationalism is poisonous to their domination of the world. It's the only thing that could stand up to white supremacy. And it starts with learning about Liberia. You know, Liberia was supposed to be not just a few settlers going over there, right? The problem was we got caught up in America and we lost track of Liberia. And so, therefore, until Marcus Garvey came, and the whole thing is after World War II, black people were sort of cut off, and people in Liberia started looking towards being part of the African society. So they lost the vision of millions of black people coming home to build Africa. So until I came along with this movement, right, we're going to reactivate this movement again. And so therefore I decided I'm going to write this novel, right? And when this novel right here one day becomes a movie or popular and everything like that, this movement is going to take off again. That's the purpose of me doing this. 10 years after I did a this wrote this book, published 2014, to almost the exact same. Well, within a few months, we took our first tour. I had my brother Brahmani here helped me organize our first tour to Liberia. That was a dream come true, and that was just a test run. Because in the future, it's going to be more than just people going on tours. It's going to be people actually going over there to build and settle. So this was why I wrote this book, to start a movement. It's more just entertainment. It's to start a movement. And so, like I said, in the book, you will enjoy characters and stuff like that. Will bring to life 19th century Black America in Africa, in Liberia. You will love the book, The first chapter was called, let me see, get to the forward, you pass it forward. The first chapter was called the christening, hold up, the christening.
Yeah, perfect. And that's a good time to read some of your excerpts from the book itself, because
Yeah,
you have a lot of pages, man. 222 pages.
yeah. So, like I said, I put my life work into this book. This is not some anybody can write a book. No, this book I have to say is a masterpiece. The reason why I was able to write this book because I was always historic. I always read historical novels, and I knew the techniques people would do. They would put stuff in there so make you go look. Like I put the Colfax massacre in here, the Hamburg massacre in here. Certain things that make people want to look. I mentioned certain people that you got to go look up and when I see if they really existed and stuff like that. So it's a learning thing. You learn a lot about Liberia just by reading a novel and you get entertainment. The first the christening of the Azor. What the Azor was a three-mast sail ship. A three-mast sail ship is called a bark. A brig is a five-mast sail ship. A one-mast sail ship is called a schooner. A three-mast sail ship is called a bark. The Azor was a bark. The bark Azor. Okay. It was piloted by a captain named Carrington. The Carrington, similar to the real person, but I changed his name to Carrington, Blake Carrington. He was a ship captain, and also I got some of the documents that he kept records and journals and stuff like that. I fictionalized some of the stuff he wrote about. He wrote about the fact that in his observation of the Liberian, he said they're definitely this civilization is definitely above the American Negro. You know, he said them being able to govern themselves and everything. This level of civilization was way higher than the Negroes left back in America. That's another thing that struck me when I read this one. I said, so we're always led to believe that Black people in America are the most civilized, the most advanced, and all stuff like that because we live in America. Actually, it's just the opposite, you know? So therefore, and on a warm morning of the 18th, April 21st, and I timed this 40 days, it was 40 days and 40 nights at sea, you know? And basically, when they arrived, and you have to learn things like the ship, the knots, nautical knots, all the stuff like that. I had to learn all that stuff like that. I had to take a design of the ship and whatnot, and have the above deck people, the cabin people. I had the galley people and the hull people. And each one of those levels of the ship represented Black America at the time. The cabin people represented the upper class elite Black America at the time. In other words, the Azor was a microcosm of Black America in the 19th century. You know, so you had the cabin people up top. They basically ate in the galley and whatnot. They had the best foods and everything. Then you have the people that lived in the hull and stuff like that. So they basically ate less, but they was cramped together in a hull at the bottom of the ship and whatnot. There was a couple of people that was stowed away on the ship. One of the mistakes that was made was there's supposed to be a physician, a doctor on the ship. There was no, so there was an outbreak of measles and a few people died. And I showed that in the novel. They had to throw people overseas because they died on the ship. Making this voyage. But nevertheless, the voyage was there. And in the one chapter I wrote the middle passage. Right. In other words, basically, the middle passage is like a chrysalis. They went through a transformation, right? Whatever they were in Charleston, South Carolina, the social constructs began to disappear as they became Azorians. That means that one people, one ship, one mission. They became a people. They went on this trip strangers, and they came off the ship of people, ready to build and contribute to a new nation. So when you read this book and everything, I urge you to get this book and whatnot. You're going to understand why this movement is so serious, why we take this tour seriously, and why we basically are telling people to please come on this tour with us. Please support Liberia. Please get involved. Right, Liberia is our last chance. Our ancestors started something. We have to finish it and complete it. So, anything else you want to ask me, Brother Mamani?
Yes, Color Genesis. I appreciate the beautiful overview. And let me stop this real quick of your book. And you've literally just reconnected what people may say is lost legacy. Because a lot of times we have great history and great works that we as a people have done, but then it gets washed under the rug. And myself, literally, the whole time I was in school, from the sixth grade here in America all the way to the 12th grade, I don't think I remember hearing about Liberia once, brother. That's why I'm always just like appreciate your literally your dedication of just doing the research and putting it together. And people may not understand this, that it takes a lot of research to even put anything together as far as, and I go back to saying 222 pages. I'm still trying to like figure out how you compile all this research and how long did it even take you
It
to
took me
put
like
that research
about
together.
it took me 2 years.
See, there you go, man. That's a man that's dedicated right there, man. Some of us can't
And I was
even
doing
stay
that while I was
simple.
running when I was pretty much new to insurance and whatnot. But I knew this had to be done. I knew this would have to be done. My ancestors called me and said, "Look, Kyle, you have to do this. No ifs, no ands, or buts about it. You have to do this. You have to write this book. You have to lead this mission. You have to do this. This is what I was put on this earth for.
So it was a direct calling from the ancestors.
Exactly.
And then you have, found yourself there in Liberia four times.
Yeah.
And
Four
so
times.
when you initially, so you wrote a book literally like almost several years before you actually went to the country, which is very
Exactly.
impressive.
Yeah.
So
It
people
was
probably always saying like, how do you know so much about Liberia and how? Because it seemed like you know more about Liberia than most Liberians I've met, literally. No
yeah.
disrespect, but a lot of times the researchers and the people who put the work in may know more about a country than the people who live in the country.
Yeah. It's the truth though. Because like I said, I see the whole thing is when people believe certain things about things, and it's always on the whole negative. It's always on the whole negative, right? So when people start coming up with negativity and stuff like that, you have to understand right off that someone's not giving you the whole story. I could even say that too. Even when you talk about the Boers in South Africa, we don't know the whole story. We never did. We know that, yeah, we say, oh, racist apartheid went up, but we don't really know everything that went on. And we see now that maybe we kind of overreacted to apartheid South. We didn't understand. I didn't. I look. Let me give you another example, Bawani. It's going to be talked about. The white South Africa apartheid government. Do you know they tried to form black countries in the country? You know, they tried to form black governments. KwaZulu had its own parliament, military. Same thing with Botswana, Transkei. All these were going to be separate independent republics inside of a union of South Africa. But we were taught that the blacks were at the bottom, whites were like that. We did not know. So those of us who are black nationalists, right? I would have friggin' supported like having my own parliament. We don't have that in America. Show me any place in America where black people have their own parliament, they make their own laws, have their own police and military and all stuff like that, and their own taxation ability. We don't have that in America, right? So I don't think the black South African situation is like black America. Black America is completely dominated by another race of people, unfairly dominated. where another race of people basically has all power. And then you ask yourself this question: what gives another race of people the right to rule over another race of people? You know, and so therefore, now if you basically say that's fine, that means that you're saying that you're an inferior people. I don't believe anybody should rule over. So I think any attempt for people to be free should be lauded. I mean, I don't care how feeble it is. People want freedom. They want freedom. I don't care where it comes in. There's nothing like that taste of liberty. Liberia's seal, if you put the seal up, Bonnie, the love of liberty. The love of liberty brought us here. And these people that went to Liberia, they were not looking to oppress nobody. They were looking for liberty. The idea that they could practice their religion, they could practice worship they want to worship, laugh the way they want to laugh, cry they want to cry, pray the way they want to pray, and be free finally. They basically were people that said, how do you basically have in a world where on one side they were being oppressed by the white race in the West, and the other side in Africa you had wicked kingdoms and rulerships that were tyrannical and stuff like that. On that space, and when you look at my novel, the one part called the parade, that chapter is very important because a character named John Marshall said, "Look, our freedom is this little strip of land that's 40 miles deep, right? So that's all Liberia was at the time. 40 miles in, and like 300 miles of coastline is our freedom. Protecting us is the ocean right here, our military, our navy, and then our people, army forces that will protect us from the interior. Right here, we have a piece of tranquility, and that's what you see in this picture right here, a piece of tranquility on a piece of soil. This was like this. When you go to Liberia and you look at the bus on Ducor Hill, we saw they show people praying that have no idea what it's like to land on free soil. After years in bondage and everything like that, they read and said, my God, we are free." And they wanted to keep that freedom. There was many attempts by the United States, Britain to colonize Liberia, but Liberia could have asked for colonization and nobody would have had anything against them. Nobody would have said anything wrong because they said, "You're a struggling country, why try?" But there was something in them that they knew they could be free and govern themselves. Now ask yourself this question: how is it that they believed that they could do something like that, govern a country when most of the world, 90% of the rest of the world, invited the frigging Europeans in? Africans in South Africa, Nigeria, the Congo invited the white man in. Zimbabwe and Zambia, they invited the white man in, said sign on the pick. Next, they were told their land was owned by Cecil Rhodes and the British Empire. This was one country that said Africa is for the Africans, for the Negro race, or not. This will be a sanctuary. So this is probably the greatest achievement in. I think, in people will say, "Oh yeah, well no." This right here, Liberia was probably the most remarkable thing the black race has ever created. An independent republic that was recognized as one of the leading republics in the world at one time. It was one of the leading nations of the world in the League of Nations, stuff like that. Liberia was there. Liberia was a deciding vote in support of the state of Israel. So Liberia's always been in front and center on the world stage. And what we're doing right now, our connection to Liberia is going to put Liberia back on the world stage. So this is important. I am so glad my brother Bomani is joining me with this and whatnot. This is like the answer to my prayers.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely, brother. We have to work together to build this, man. This is one movement and energy where, more of us have to come together as a union, regardless if we're working on other projects or working with other country. So, it's a privilege for me to work on this. Our ancestors did a great works, and this is the only country you and I could literally talk about that we all have in common. That whether you're from the Caribbean community or whether you're from Black America or for the African continent, that it's one of the greatest thing that been accomplished by our ancestors collectively, and you're bringing this to life, and always appreciate us talking about this because the more we talk about this, the more I get to learn and the more other people get to learn because I mean, 2 years of your research is serious business. Some
Yeah.
people can't sit around to do things for like 1 or 2 days or even 1 or 2 hours. Must has to be focused. And the whole time when you're doing your research and putting the book together, did you ever lose any kind of focus or
Well, let me tell you something. I had to go to libraries, right? Let me give you an example.
All right.
I went to Newport News library, Newport News, a real old library, in Newport News, right? And to be honest with you, right, I went to the thing. The bookshelf was dusty. I had to blow dust off the book, right? And there was this book on Liberia, right? And I opened it up. Remember how they used to have those things where you sign the book out? Remember those things in school? The card
Your
inside the
library
book?
card, right? Your library
Yeah,
card, right?
yeah. And the thing, right? Yo, this book was last checked out in 1967.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
I took two books. Both of them weren't checked out since the 1960s. So I took those two books home. One was Liberia. It was about the interior of Liberia. This anthropologist went into the interior, said, "Yeah, this some crazy. These people." He said about the native people in the interior. He said they were very very primitive, whatever like that. Whatever. I wasn't. It wasn't really flattering, right? But they said they can learn. They can learn. They have the ability to learn. And they basically was in this other book called Liberia, America's Africa Friend, right? That book's still expensive on Amazon. It's on now Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. I still to this day want to get that book. That book really opened my eyes up. So I got that book right when I started my novel, right? And that book really cleared up what I was basically suspected all along, that the history of Liberia told to us was a lie. You know, that R.L. Anderson, I don't know if he was black, white, whatever, but he gave an impartial view of Liberia. And he basically said the British. He called the British out, Barris, Lady Chalker, and all these other people. They were trying to colonize Liberia by spreading misinformation to the black world that this country is over there abusing natives. They would tell other people in Africa, you can't let black people run govern themselves. Look what they do in Liberia. Lies. You know, they were telling lies. And also, he broke down the Fernando Post situation. Elvis tries to lie about the Fernando Post situation. He said what happened was this: the way he sort of comically wrote it, he was like, when the Christie came over there, did the Christie report, right? He said, first of all, most people in America, he only went to Monrovia and he was interviewing Native people. He did not find any evidence of slavery, right? But he did say the Liberian government needs to work on some of the conditions of labor and everything like that. Well, people took the Christie report. Oh, Christie report condemned Liberia as having slavery and whatnot. Then he found out the truth that slavery or contract labor was going on the Crew Coast for almost 100 years. The government of Liberia tried to tax it to control it, right? And the crew chiefs rebelled against them. And there was a lot of crew people that were British loyalists that were trying to go to crew and get the crew to succeed from Liberia. That's where the conflict came in. So while Liberians were basically, they shouldn't have been taking money, they were taxing the crew chiefs all the head count that they were getting, because a lot of money. The crew chiefs were getting all the money for 100 years from the Spanish and the British by all the crew boys that was being sent to these islands like Fernando Po, and other places, even the Panama Canal was by crew labor. So therefore, when the government of Liberia tried to control this crew labor, they tried to make it seem the government of Liberia was engaged in slave trafficking. And he broke it down to it. He said, look, he said, when the Christie people, the native people saw Christie in Liberia, they said, oh yeah, the white man's come to take the American Liberians back to America. That's what they thought it was doing. So they began rebelling. And that's when President Howard had to send an army down there, right? And like 54 crew chiefs were hung, because they hoisted the British flag and declared themselves a part of the British Empire, you know? And so therefore, that's what happened. Not saying the American Liberian government was innocent completely, but the way they make it seem like it is that we came over there and we were just enslaving the crew people. The crew trade, the trafficking, or the migration of crew migration was going on since the country was the first settlers came there. The crew were going to different parts of Africa doing labor on the French, British, and Spanish plantations. And so the government of Liberia tried to just like uh, control the activity off its coast because all these foreign vessels pull up to their coast. You know, armed men would basically show up at Liberia's coast, hauling people off. So they had to do something, to control it, as any government would. So when I read that R. Anderson book, I was like, wow, amazed. I was like, man, this is ridiculous. Because, and then they said the British tried to, Edwin Berkeley, right? He outmaneuvered the British, right? They strategically went to Firestone, right? Offered Firestone a deal, right? And when Firestone used that diplomatic cover, right, power to hold off the British had a global monopoly on rubber trade from Malaysia and South America and everything like that. Harvey Firestone wanted its own independent rubber supply, and so therefore the United States government said, "Don't invade Liberia. We got something like this." So that gave Liberia got a good 10 years to negotiate with Firestone. They were stalling. And the British were like, well, if Liberia owes us a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. We're going to take the country over, whatever. And the United States said, no, we're not going to do that. And then what happened was Harvey Firestone himself said, he tried to get the United States to send gunboats over to take the country over. He said, no. The United States said, you can't, it'll be immoral for us to take over a republic based on a business deal with a private businessman. So they didn't do that. So Harvey Firestone went back with hat in hand and negotiated a deal. And then 10 years later, Firestone was established. But it took like 15 years for Firestone to get. They make it sound like Firestone came over there, took all this land. That was 15 years. In that 15 years, Liberia built up a global capital to stave off the British to the front. They used their high profile meetings with the United States and everything like that to tell the British that they got friends. And so that's what happened. Then after World War II, the British were trying to rebuild, so they gave up trying to colonize Liberia because they were trying to hold on to its colonies in Africa. So they had lost interest in Liberia, right? And the Liberian dollar, the U.S. dollar, replaced the British pound in Liberia. So it was over. So when you talk about Liberia, you only talk about 35 years. From 1945, after the siege against the British and French were over, to 1980. That's all you're talking about. The modern age of Liberia, the beautiful age of Liberia that you see, all those buildings and everything you see was just a 35 years. They did all that in 35 years. And then you had the coup of 1980. And then people always like, yeah, well, we had a coup, where like that. Well, you only had 35 years. What did they expect? Liberia to give everybody a high standard of live like America? You're still talking about Liberia is still in Africa. So the reality of Liberia is going to be aligned with the rest of Africa. Yeah, the people on the coast live a little better, but they were transplanting an American way of life to Africa. So the question we should ask is, are Black people allowed to build anything? Like, let me give an example. Let's say you're building a community in Ghana and your community starts up and running, thriving and everything. The locals say, well, you guys are living better than us. We're going to take that shit from you because you can't live better than us in our own country, whatever, like that. So that's a problem we have in Africa. You know, we have to find a way how to give everybody a high standard of living or decent standard of living, so they won't feel jealous of the few people that got. You know, or we could be like Nigerians. Nigerians basically have a mansion here and they're overlooking Makoko. Like screw those people. They don't care. But those of us coming from the West, we can't do that. That's why we want to build a middle class in Africa, so everybody can have at least a decent standard of living. So I believe that's what Liberia's headed towards. Giving everybody. You saw in that video I played the other night, the Wealth of Liberia. They were building housing for the poor. Modern housing. When I play a video, the Wealth of Liberia, people get, wow, man, this is they were making progress. But that's why I said my goal is to vindicate Liberia. You know,
Absolutely, brother. Because even when I used to hear people talk about Liberia and especially in the 70s, you used to hear about people from different parts of the known world, and that's where they'll take their vacation to, and that's where they'll enjoy
Liberia was like
paradise.
Dubai.
I mean, it had. I mean, and at that point, countries are either still colonized or getting out of colonization, and this was like one of the few free black nations in the world. And if left untouched, I mean, it could literally be this the top country in Africa and one of the top countries in the world.
I was talking to Dr. Kula today, and I'll tell you, Liberia in the 70s was starting to move towards a corporate system, which they were basically corporatizing all their concessions like Lamco, Bong Mines, all the stuff like that, Firestone. And they were basically the Liberian portion of the corporation. Like Firestone was partnering with the Liberian government, Bong Mines, Liberia was taking its half of the thing, right? And issuing stocks to its citizens. That was supposed to be Liberia was on its way to create its own stock market, stock exchange. You know, and that's what we want to do. We want to create another Liberian stock exchange, right? And we can monetize their gold fields and stuff like that, the rubber plantation. We could really build Liberia again, and we get the right people on the ground and we get the given the opportunity. We could do this. But my goal is to get more people involved in Liberia, more Black Americans with money and power to get involved with Liberia. When that you can't go wrong. And I think it's every Black person's America before any other country in Africa. Liberia has to come first.
Absolutely. And there you go, family. That's a flag, and that's Liberia right there. And family, once you're looking right there, let me try to see if I can just get a there we go, a little better view of the whole Liberia. Just go up a little bit. I see Maryland, and I see what I see, brother. When you look at the coast, I mean, Liberia literally has to be like the greatest coastline that you can ever think of and imagine.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, and we're gonna get a chance to make our way around more parts of Liberia. But let me see. We're in Grand Bassa, and we go all the way up to uh, Grand Cape Mount, or it's called this Cape Mount, or is it still called Grand Cape
I
Mount?
call it Grand Cape Mount, but people just say
So
Cape Mount for short.
Cape Mount. So from Grand Bassa to Grand Cape Mount, we literally journey from right here in Buchanan all the way up to Robertsport.
Yep.
That's a journey. We literally.
Yeah.
I know we didn't go all the way like inland and so on, but it's like we have to start somewhere, and then we see
Think
the
about it. Also, check us out. The next year, that same year, I made my way up to Nimba. After y'all left, I made my way up to Nimba.
yeah. So there's so much more to discover. And then you have Bong over here, where you always talk about the Bong mine, and you show these great videos of this.
Yeah, the Bong Mile. That was the largest investment in Black Africa.
I mean, that coast, I'm still looking at the coastline, brother. I'm still, every time I look at the map, I see this beautiful coastline. And I
Yeah,
mean,
bottom line, Liberia could be a paradise, a
and I'm
paradise
telling
on earth.
people, like, if this was Jamaica, it would be all just colonized by white resorts, which we
The
that
thing is, but
which
Liberia's
is what we
holding
don't
out.
want to,
Liberia's
which
holding
is
out.
what we don't
Liberia
want.
doesn't want that.
And that's why Kyle is so passionate, trying to get more Black America, more Black people from other nations to focus on Liberia, because he sees that people are distracted by going all over the continent and like forgot about Liberia. So that's why we're just getting more into the conversation and pushing Liberia, because this Liberia has so much to offer, and but we also have to step our game up and participate and make our way to the country. So that's why we have these incredible tours, and that's why Kala has been making his way the 4 times that you've been there. And the 4 times you've been there, you spent about 3 to 4 weeks, right?
I used to say like a month.
There you go, man. I mean, that's a blessing, man. So people probably like, what kind of job you have to where you can spend a month in Africa?
Well, the bottom line is, like I said, I want look, like I wanted to. This is what I want to do. I work for myself. I'm an independent, broker. I have an agency. I make good money, everything like that, and I have time, so I can leave anytime I want to. I can go. It's a life I want to live. So I can. My freedom is everything. And like I said, Liberia is about liberty. It's sad when people basically cannot get up and leave and live the life they want to live and leave and just go and travel and stuff like that. They be holding to a job, whatever. I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do, but it just I feel blessed that I'm in the position where I am because I'm able to do this. I'm able to do this. I'm able to do contribute to this movement and stuff like that. So I am truly blessed in what I'm doing. I'm very happy what I did and what I'm continuing to do. This is my passion. I love this country. Like I said, when you love a country, I consider Liberia my country.
Well, it seemed like a country for all of us as black people because
Yeah.
I've never seen a coat of arms like this. It's like that's why I have it up to show people. The love of liberty brought us here. Republic of Liberia, 1847 to 2025, 170 years, 78 years of independence. That's it's still amazes me because all other nations were literally just controlled on the colonization or dealing with slavery, dealing with imperialism, some form of control by other nations and a race of people. And here you have Liberia, the lone star of Africa.
And these countries
I
are
guess
still
that's why you have that one star, right? That's
the
the
lone
lone star.
star. Yeah, the lone star.
Yeah.
That means a bright star on a dark continent. The Liberia was the light of Africa. That's a lone star. Now, all the other countries in Africa and West Africa are still suffering because of colonialism. Remember something: the French and all these other countries mortgaged that land off. Right? They still got to pay for all that land. You know, Liberia was never mortgaged off. It never was mortgaged by Jewish banks and Rothschild banks and all stuff like that. So it's the only really free country. It's the only chance we got. If you go to any other part of Africa, for the most part, maybe Angola, because they fought a civil war, but pretty much for the most part, Liberia is the only country in Africa there's not gonna be there's no conflict, you know, there's no land conflict because the bottom line is the Europeans never settled there. So the bottom line, Liberia is free soil. When I'm there, I just feel like I'm on top of the world. I feel like I'm on the top of the mountain. I'm on my own soil. There's nothing like that feeling when I'm in Liberia, a touchdown Liberian soil. I feel like I'm at home, whatnot. It's nothing like that feeling. That month I'm there, I feel like I'm on time. I'd be like, oh shit, I only got a week left, man. Jeez, let me just suck all this up.
Yeah, so I mean, I see the big word liberty right there in the middle. And then can you explain the coat of arms? Because I see paradise, I see the sun, I see
All right.
the,
I'll tell you what, it's like this. The dove is what they call the pepper bird, right? The pepper bird, and I use this omen in my novel, right? There was a pepper bird in the chapter 3, Cry of the Pepper Bird, right? A pepper bird was found in Charleston, South Carolina, right? And so therefore that was an omen to the people in South Carolina to come to Liberia. A pepper bird's only found in Liberia. So when they found one, I was fictitious. I put that in there. When they found the pepper bird in Liberia, in Charleston, South Carolina, they said, something, we're getting called the cry of the pepper bird, And so the pepper bird delivering a message across the sea to his people to come there. And therefore the ship in the background is people coming there. And when you come there, they understand that they got to get to work right away and building. That's why you got the shovel and the anvil and the sun in the background, you know. That's a very powerful image of people who said, look, we're tired of everything. Just give us a piece of soil. This is what we'll do to it. And another thing I want to say this, right? Because we're recording this, I want to get this very clear. Let me say something. The first 8 presidents of Liberia were born in the United States. To be a Liberian, you don't have to be a Liberian like you see these idiots talking about now. Any black person in America, right, that chooses to be a Liberian is a Liberian. That's according to the Constitution. There is no one group of people that's a Liberian and whatnot. The indigenous people, oh, we're Liberians, and you're not Liberian. No, any black person, right? Liberia just means somebody who's seeking liberty. That's the true meaning of Liberia. Those who are seeking liberty.
that's a beautiful thing. So like I was at the Liberian Independence and the brother was asking me what part of Liberia you're from, and I was like, I was originally born in Kingston, Jamaica, and he just welcomed me and said, you're a Liberian. I just felt welcome. I mean,
Yeah,
I've
that's
heard
what
that
that's what
several
Liberia
times.
is. That's what Liberia is. They just, if you're black, it's in their culture. If you're black, you this is your country. Everybody knows that, you know. So don't listen to people like Elvis and all these other people like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've
Any
heard that every time I talk to somebody from Liberia, they always first thing always ask me what part of Liberia you're from, and it's the same conversation. But that's great welcoming because nowhere else anybody's gonna even say that. If you show up in another country and you tell them, where you're from, they're gonna tell you welcome to their country, but they're not gonna say that you're a Liberian or you're from
they'll,
this
they'll, they'll
country.
say welcome to my country. In Liberia, they'll say welcome home. They say, oh yeah, welcome home, man. You know, welcome home, welcome to the house, welcome back home. You know, that's what they said to me when I first got there. I was like in tears almost, right, when they would say that to me. Oh well, welcome home. You know,
Imagine.
welcome home, welcome home. You know, they understand. See, Liberians understand why, as a Black American, you're there. They know it. You know, they know. They say, okay, we know y'all. You're here. You know, you're a Black American. We're not. This is a land of free. It's the only place you're gonna really have freedom, and that's why you're here. They know it. You know.
Yeah, the country is very peaceful and free, and people don't know what they're missing out on, and they probably like, why you guys pushing so hard? Because we know you don't know what
Because
you're
we're
missing.
real
That's why we're
Pan
trying to get
Africans.
you to. That's why we're trying to get you to like get a feel of the country, but you won't really feel it until you show up. You know,
And what you call we're real. Me and you are real Black nationalists and real Pan Africans. That's why we understand. You know, look, I don't like that petty bougie. Oh yeah, you gotta come here and like, okay, like I'm in a foreign. Look, I like feeling like I'm at home when I go someplace. You know, and Liberia makes you feel like you're at home. You know, because of the history of the country and everything like this tied to our history. You know, it ain't like somebody. It's not. It's there's no colonialism. There's no British. Like, let me give you an example. I hear not. I'm not trying to knock Ghana or Nigeria. Don't take me the wrong way, folks. Right? But when I hear see Ghanaians and I see white people with their tribal chief stuff on something like that, I'll say Ghanaian guys marrying these white chicks. When I'm like, and I'm saying to myself, and I see these people like in Gambia. You got these white guys on the beach with little African boys. When I don't, you don't see that in Liberia.
no, you don't.
It doesn't have that history. You know,
Like, I don't see a bunch of and it's unfortunately it's popular in many countries. I don't want to call countries because I don't want to throw people off. But yeah, that's one thing I didn't see. I didn't see old white men or old white women with young Liberians.
you're not going to see that in Liberia. You're not going to see that at all. Like, people know. Like I said, white people try to play stupid, but they know. They know what country. You know why? Because the people who do that, right? They're not. The Africans are not innocent victims. They literally invite people in to do that because they think they're gonna gain money and stuff like that. Those white people that come and do that are invited in. People don't go to a country if they think that the worst could happen to you, right? They won't do it. You have to be invited in. Just like people talk about the Philippines. The Philippines invite people over there because that's what it is. You go over there and get these young girls, and that's part of the culture. That's never been part of the culture in Liberia. You know, so don't mean you can't meet women. Because there's plenty of that's what makes it. Because there's so many beautiful women around. Because they don't have to really prostitute themselves, whatever like that. Because the bottom line, they don't have a bunch of white guys there. Thing. But if we don't fucking step up, that could be. Don't underestimate these people. You know,
Absolutely. So you're basically saying it's not a place for white sex tourism, which is a big thing around the world. I mean, you see in
no,
Latin
it's not.
America, it's like it's a big playground for white sex tourism. Or
Liberia's a very Christian country, a Christian and a Muslim country, very conservative people. They're very conservative people, and they're really down to earth people that are good natured and just innocent. Just really innocent and just really nice, real good people. Good people. Everybody got their ways, but they're really, really good people. And I really think as a country we could build with. And remember something: anybody could be a Liberian. That's what the government of Liberia now is understanding. What they messed up was they had 45 years. Those 45, those black people from America going to Liberia all up until 1980. You know, there was black people from America immigrating to Liberia in the 70s. Bill Russell, basketball player,
yes,
he has a farm there.
that's
John
just
Amos was there. So Liberia was the type of place I was attracting people like Ozzie Davis, Sidney Poitier, Nina Simone and whatnot. It was always attracting people, Muhammad Ali, like that. So it's always been a place that attracted black people from America and stuff like that. But after that coup, Ghana sort of stepped in. Liberia is like this. So I think Liberia is going to regain its position, as far as the place of Black America coming to it one night. I really do believe Liberia was going to be that place, because of the history, Liberia. It's like once we, like, another thing is, when you start looking at, I want to tell people this. There's two stories in the last 400 years. One is us being taken from Africa, but the last 200 years, we've been returning to Africa, not just Liberia. Those African Americans who settled in Ghana, you know, those African Americans who went to Lagos, Nigeria. People don't know that history, the Creole people. Those African Americans who went to the Congo. Those African Americans who settled in South Africa. People don't know this. There's also in other parts of the world. There's African Americans who settled in Russia. There's a huge Black population in France. Black Parisian culture. So this idea that Black America is limited to the United States is a farce. There's Black Americans that went to Costa Rica, Panama, Samana, Dominican Republic. So we've always basically been the people that's been, globetrotters. That's been like the last 200 years we've been migrating. But people make it seem like, oh, they get brand new on you. We go to Africa. Oh man, we've been returning to Africa for 200 years. 150 years ago, a large settlement of African Americans settled in Cape Town and Johannesburg. Working for the Anglo American. We've been in Africa. We've been part of the African liberation struggle. The UNIA was in Liberia. That's how the OAU was formed, of the UNI Marcus Garvey disciples that went to Liberia. This is nothing new to us. People are like, oh, we're just going to Africa. It's the first time. No, we've been there. And that's the way Liberians understand. They've been living with Black Americans for 200 something years. They understand you. They know who you are. That's the thing about Liberians. They know who you are. They listen to our music. They look at our movies. They know us. So it's nothing unusual you going to Liberia and trying to get along. There's nothing unusual about that. So like people think like, oh, I'm going some. No, it's not some far out country with some real distant culture. Liberia is almost the closest you're going to get to Black America, in Africa. To me, it's Africa for beginners.
Good point. Good point. I mean, that's the closest relationship that us in the diaspora have to the African continent, and I'm happy that we're here to this restore the glory and reconnect people, and that's why we have this flyer up here to show that that's us right there. You're over there in depends on what you're looking at, the far right
Yeah,
or
I'm
the
in the
far
far right
left,
over there.
and uh, and the famous first president,
Joseph
which
Jenkins
is
Robert.
I mean, brother, once I walk up there, brother, it was I mean, it's like I was like, wow, and the statue is shining, and it was just like I was just like thinking in my mind, like just going back to that time of just how proud our people were to just say, you know what, we built the first African republic.
You know what he said? He said, "I'm just as." He goes, "I'm a president like George Washington." That's what he was saying back then. He goes, "Who's George Washington, Thomas Jefferson? I'm a head of state like they are."
Yes, a straight founding father.
Yeah, I'm a founding father of this country. So he was like basically a rock. He was like a rock star. They was also say, that one queen, Queen Charlotte, and that British queen that like she was part black or not. I ain't gonna say nothing on here, but he was friends with her, and she gave him a gunboat. So I'll leave it at that. He had dinner with her and whatnot. She gave him a gunboat. To combat slavery on the coast. Because there was still slave ships. Smuggling slaves off in the Atlantic Ocean right there.
So
Liberia
basically, Liberia played a great part in
and
this
the slave was, yeah.
for their other brothers and sisters that was being taken away.
And Liberia was a dumping ground for recaptured slaves. They gave them refuge, and those people became part of Liberia. People from the Congo, they call them Congos. So many of them, they became mixed in with the so-called American Liberians and Caribbeans that they call all the people Congo people. that everybody that was an outsider was called Congo people after a while. That's
And
why they
so
call
that's literally what the Congo people mean, because you hear that terminology a lot.
yeah, Congo people. They call them Congo people because a lot of Native Liberians thought the Black Americans and the Caribbeans from the Congo. They thought they were from the Congo.
And that's some of our DNA,
Yeah,
or
my
many
DNA
of our DNA.
my DNA comes from the Congo, so they definitely know I'm from the Congo. So we have the Congolese people; those are from the Congo have a different look, and they're West African, phenotype a little bit, but they know people from the Congo, different Bantu people from the Congo. So it's lumped us all together as one group, you know. So this idea that American Liberians were discriminated. No, they were black folks just like us today. You know, people who were slaves, ex-slaves, free blacks, all that stuff that Kabaji was a microcosm of Black America and the diaspora right there on African soil. People coming from the islands, people coming from Canada, people coming from the UK. Those people even came from South America. You know, people
That's
even came from Ghana and Nigeria. And settled in Liberia. Everybody was welcome.
that
Everybody was
Now I
welcome.
can really see why you title the book "The Journey to the Promised Land," because that
Yeah,
is really a promised land, especially back in those days. Because you
yeah,
went anywhere else, you'd have been snatched up and put into slavery.
yeah. If look right now at that time, right, which we call sailing in the Atlantic was dangerous. Slave ships. There was a party, and I hate to
And
tell
then
you.
you got to add pirates, because pirates are
Yeah,
some dangerous people.
yeah. That was happening. On this they don't talk about that in movies like Black Sail. Lots of pirates were turned into slave traders. They found it was easy to trade slaves if they became respectable. The British dressed and the French dressed all took gave their pirates a deal, right? You're gonna be searching the seas for us. We're gonna hunt you down globally and hang you, execute you, right? Or hey, we got an opportunity for you. Real dirty work, but we need you to transport human bodies across the Atlantic. That's how it happened. So the pirates changed their thing to slave trading, you know, and also in 1879, there was two African American businessmen in Boston. Think about it, businessmen, educated businessmen in Boston, chartered a ship to what is now Bossa Cove. See that area we was in, Edina, and
Yes,
they basically tried to
history.
negotiate with a chief for some strip of land. This was way before Liberia or Sierra Leone was thought about, right? What happened was the Portuguese saw this as a threat to the slave trade institution, right? So they were betrayed by the Bassa chief, right? Kidnapped, gave into the Portuguese, and the Portuguese took them into slavery. Think about it. You're a black man, never been in slavery. You're in Boston, businessman. You want to look for some land to expand. You heard about black people talking about we want to go to Africa and build. Like I said, this thing about returning to Africa. So they took it on their own dime. Got a ship, sailed across there, and they ended up back in chains. Sold to God knows where. You know. So this time, when the Elizabeth sailed, it was sailed had an armed escort, and the ACS paid for armed agents. To negotiate. That's the only difference. Because the bottom line, had they sent the African Americans or wherever back there, they could have been sold back into slavery. That's what we were dealing with. So we had to do what we had to do to survive. Our ancestors went to Liberia. We were not going back to slavery. So if it meant war, it meant war. That is what it is. Not everything in so-called Africa and Pan is pleasant. You know, that was the reality. Either they fought and defended themselves, or they're going to be put back, sold back into slavery. And slavery was so horrible. The thought of being sold back into slavery was so horrible that they decided, look, if it means going to war with our own people, so be it. They were not going to go back to slavery. And basically, I said to myself when I read that, I said, finally, that's the only time in history besides Nat Turner I knew that we fought back. I said, we actually fought back. I was so proud. I said, we actually fought back. you know, because they always have this idea that we're just both victims and helpless and all stuff like that. Liberia was really our answer to the world, you know. And Liberia maintained independence, right? They had a strong army and navy. They had little gunboats that patrolled their shoreline. Everything, they captured pirates off their coast and everything. Like they really, basically, it was remarkable. Imagine being on a country of soil and you're completely safe from the white man. No matter what you do, where like that, like I said, when people veer off in the last chapter of my book, it was the last chapter is called The Children of God. And the one part, the Children of God, I want to talk about this, right? They basically was sitting in Thinkers Village. I went to Thinkers Village, right? That's right in McGribby, and they was sitting under a student was sitting under a canopy, right? And they were saying, "What do you see when you see the ocean?" Right? Just one of the kids would visualize ships coming in to drop their people off, right? And then some said, "Well, depending on how you see the uh, the thing, if you're a native person, you're going to see somebody come to alter your way of life. But if you're looking at the coastline from the ship, you see freedom." So it's just two powerful images I put in the book. I don't want to give the novel away, but that chapter was really powerful. Let's tell you something. Yeah, our ancestors came there when they saw that land, that beautiful land, what is now Candeja or not. They saw Robertsport right there. They told me when people said that big giant tree at Nana's Lodge, he said that's what J.J. Roberts first saw, that big giant cottonwood tree. He said, "Yeah, this was freedom. When they saw that shore, they saw freedom." Now, the native people might have saw an invasion and stuff like that, depending on how you look at it. But the people who came to Liberia, they saw heaven. They saw paradise. They saw freedom. They saw liberty. We got to get people, even Liberians living in America, to start seeing their country as a land of liberty again, not peril. There's nothing stopping Liberians from coming back to their country, building and carving a pace for themselves, building businesses and everything, so they can live with freedom. But so many convinced that the only way they can live freedom is in America. And I do believe in the future, Liberia is going to challenge America in the hearts and minds of the black race. I believe that. If we keep telling Liberia's story, Liberia is going to win, you know, because it's the only place that truly gave us sanctuary. It gave us what America could never give us or never will give us: peace. If anybody tells you they got peace in America, yeah, you got a good job or not, I'll say you're a liar. All I have to do is pull up your TikTok videos, pull up your YouTube channel, fill up with something. It's nothing but confusion, misery, and suffering and everything like that. And I say, hey, it's so rough here. Let's go to Liberia. No, man, my bones were brought here, man. I'm a foundational Black American, man. See, like I said, Bomani, I have a PhD in what?
Negrology.
Negroology. There ain't nothing that shocks me about the Negro. They'll talk all that all every day. Well, I ain't leaving until I get my reparations. No, you just saying you would rather suffer in America. They clearly don't want you here. They have these ad campaigns where they're talking about good genes and all stuff like that. Yeah, they're sending these white supremacy dog whistles out every day. Who wants to be subjected to that? Like I told this one chick on Anton Dan, said, "Well, I'm not." I said, "I don't want your goddamn apology." Look, the bottom line, we passed the point of apologizing, talking, whatever. This is what I spent. This is what it means to be free. It's because I'm so into Liberia. I really don't give a shit if we ever reconcile white people anymore. I don't. I don't care. Let them have it. Let them have America. Let them have whatever the Ozarks in Arkansas. Let them have all that stupid shit. I don't care about none of that no more. Just give me Liberia. Let's find a way
Absolutely.
how to bring the trillions of dollars of Black America into Liberia, and let's build that country.
Yeah, that definitely should be the focus, because we can't trade, our continent or an incredible country like of Liberia, for just being a second or third class citizen in a white dominated nation. And that's why we're trying to get out to people. That's why we're here, family, to talk about the great legacy and history of Liberia, and letting people know that, hey, uh, it's a lot of work to be done, and we can restore the glory, and we can all be a part of that glory. And I mean, when I mean all of us, I'm talking about all black people around the entire world. That's one thing that we can all be proud of.
And if Liberia gets back to its creed as a homeland for Black people and the huddled masses of Black people's yearning for freedom, Liberia will be back the way. But if people want to come there and be tribalistic and bring tribalism, the ugliness of tribalism and all stuff like that, then it won't work. Liberia only could work when it becomes that haven for Black people. That's it. That's what the purpose of the country is. With God's grace, that's what we're doing. We are doing. We're journeying back to the promised land.
Yes, my brother Khaled. Excellent presentation and just breaking down the Liberian history. And for those who have just been following it, I'm sure there's like so many things that you have heard about the history that you didn't hear about in university, in high school, or from any of your black scholars, which is unfortunate. But we're here to just restore that glory and push the energy so you can be reconnected. So while we're looking at your book, if you can explain just the concept of what you came up with, just like the Liberian coat of arms. It looked like you took a picture from the coat of arms, and you just created something that's very significant.
Yeah, that's the ship, what's it called? I forgot. It's been so many years. The thing that steers the ship.
Yeah, I'm myself is even lost into
I
what
forgot the name of
it's
it.
called.
But
But it's all about navigation, so you have
yeah,
the.
I still had to study navigation. I had to get books on navigation for the novel to make it authentic. I had to get books on navigation. I had to get notes on nautical knots, sail, and wind direction, wind lateral directions, all stuff like that. I had to study because I had to include that in the storylines.
How did you
So,
come up with the concept of making this completely black, white, and gray?
well, it was my guy Sistak, the one I told you about. He has like 5 books under his belt. And he put out 3 books in 1 year. You
Yeah,
know,
because this is exceptional. I mean, it brings out, you have the Liberian flag.
and again, the map of Monrovia in the back. You had the ship sailing there. And it's just incredible. I told him, I said, look, the first thing I tried to do the book. The publisher said, no, that's not going to work. I did something, and they were like, nah, we can't do that. That ain't gonna sell. So basically, my friend Mel Sestak wrote it for me, and he helped me write the forward. And basically, he wanted to do the manuscript for me, but I ended up doing it myself. He didn't have the time, so I had to write. It was all written. Now with these people, now look how easy it is. You could actually do GPT and stuff like that, and they could print it out for you. You know, and so therefore, I see you got it right, but I had to type every so this right here. I had to type that right here. Now they got typing. You could talk, read, and they type for you. You know,
Yeah, this whole AI thing is
it's
gonna put a
incredible.
lot of people out of business, and it's kind of like the lady who wrote the Terminator and the Matrix is like all of the vision that she talked about is coming to life. It's just the only thing that we don't want to see is where the AI turn nuclear weapons on us.
Yeah. AI, and with AI, we could build new communities or everything like that. You could say, look, design me a community, right? Whatever, like that. We need this, that, and boom, just like that, man. They could come up with a whole new thing. This is what we do. Take a map. Say, I want to build a community in Grand Bassa. We need industries and everything like that. They would calculate all the industries that you could develop and all shit like that. The industrial zones, all that shit like that. Residential zones, parks, all that shit like that. AI, the technology is there. You just have to have the mind to want to do it. It won't take 100 years to build anything right now. We got the technology at our hands, you know.
Absolutely, and we have to use it to our best advantage. And while we're talking about the book, how many chapters do you have in the book?
It is a total of I think 12. Hold up, let me see.
And so, can you break down the significance of? I know it's a lot of chapters. Of most of the chapters
Okay.
from the beginning to the end, and then
All right, I have a hold up. Let me look for I got this thing on YouTube. Hold up. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna play something. We'll give you something to play.
and then while you're processing that, family, the book is right here in front of you, live on Amazon. And all you have to do is type in the details, and then you go to paperback and click and buy.
Okay, I'm gonna send you something.
Yeah, but this history that you broke down, this really needs to be turned into a movie. That's
Yeah, yeah. Like I
a
said,
movie slash documentary, like literally. I mean, it's just like I mean, we have a lot of great historical glory, but I don't think anything else top what our ancestors did of building the first African republic.
let me tell you something. I had two movie offers from Lionsgate and
Oh,
IBMD. But the thing
nice.
is, like Dr. Kula says, you got to come up with that script, that money for that screenplay.
Yeah, the
You got to
screenplay.
use it costs
You
fifty
gotta get
thousand dollars, right? You
you
got to
gotta
come
get
up
some
with
good
at least
screenwriters.
you got to come up at
But
least with half. I don't got 25K, you
well,
know.
the good thing is you're connected with the right person because she did that movie Providence Island, which is a
Yeah, but
good introduction.
Lionsgate, they want their screenwriters, you know. They want their you gotta use theirs. And they offered me a $1.2 million contract, you know, for the book. They wanted to buy the publishing rights. They offered me $1.2 million, you know.
They're trying to lowball you.
Yeah, but I was like, I'll take it, man, you know. You know, for a
Yeah, man,
first
that's good work, man.
it's
Seriously.
only because it's your first novel, your first book, you know. They said if you ever did another one like on this level, they liked it. They said if you ever did one on this level again, next time you could write your ticket like $10 million. You know,
Well, I'm hoping that the information get out to the right people to
I'm looking for.
get behind you.
I'm desperate. I'll take Tyler Perry, but then Tyler Perry couldn't do nothing like this. Ryan Coogler would be the perfect person to.
Absolutely, it has to be somebody that's more seasonal on this real production. Not no disrespect but it's like we don't need any buffoonery into this. This is like serious work. It's
Oh
like
yeah, it's
it
very
takes
serious.
a serious, dedicated director to produce something like this. So by us even just sharing this, you never know where it may get to where serious people made us get behind this. So that's why we have to always keep
Well,
pushing.
like I said, we'll send this video to Dr. Kula, and maybe she could forward it to John Amos's people. They might know somebody, you know.
Yeah, she has some good people with her, and this and since she's so passionate about Liberia, this get them a chance to just look at something that's incredible, and then they can just do their thing. And I mean, for those who are in that kind of business, they know what to do. But yes, we just got to keep on pushing out more
Check
information.
this out, Bomani. I sent you a video. You
Uh,
asked about the chapters of the book, but this video plays is all the chapters. You know, so
Journey to the Promised Land. All right, perfect. Let me see if I can.
you got to unmute it.
All right, perfect. I got it up, and let me just unmute and.
Oh, they took the sound out.
No, the sound is in there.
I don't hear it.
Were you able? I just paused it. Were you able to hear it? This is some incredible old footage.
Yeah, I did. I did this right when I published a book. I wrote that right when I published a book.
So I'm just leaving it right there so anyone can just
That
type
right
in the
there,
title.
see that picture right there? That's when
Yes.
E.J. Roy in 1860 came to Liberia, and he said, I got a. He was this tall, dark skinned black man, right, with an afro, and he was a businessman, right. He said, "Look, I got a ship out there. I need unloaded, right." And he's with the J.J. Roberts. Said, "I got a ship out there. Who are you?" "I'm from E.J. Roy," right. And the whole everybody was like, "Who is this guy?" He was a businessman. He goes, I'm prompt. I need this. I need this. Can you guys get your unload this thing?" Right? They said, "Okay, how much is that warehouse?" And so they gave him that warehouse, and he unloaded all his ship, all the stuff he brought from the United States, and that's them. That's what them unloading his ship. So it was like incredible. See, we weren't always getting our ass kicked, man. We were just EJ Roy became one of the richest men in the world out of Liberia. He was good at shipping machinery to Liberia and exporting coffee and cotton to the United States and throughout the world. He had a fleet of ships that he sailed to the world. And some of these Liberian men were so freaking rich, man. They were selling cotton because coffee and cotton grew wild in Liberia. Coffee was so good in Liberia. Brazilian coffee is actually Liberian coffee.
No.
Yeah, the British took that strain of Liberian coffee, the thing, and planted in Brazil. And Liberia suffered because they lost that huge market.
Yeah, what I thought you was gonna say is about gold and diamonds, but you're talking about other natural resources.
Oh yeah, back then it was just
Fam, it's a
coffee.
very rich continent, rich country, Liberia. So that's what we can't give that up for just being second and third class citizen in America, and that's why we know we're sharing with you all the valuable information so we can just organize together as a union of people and work together to restore ancestor glory and just build a future and get us connected. And right now, even modern day Liberia, you talk about all the people that that's in Liberia that's working on some good energy to make Liberia a country where more people from the diaspora can literally just reconnect. And that's what it has to be, family. So we're out here fighting a good fight and doing a good work. And that's why we don't like the trolls that try to tell us and try to throw us off and distract us because we're not going to give up, our beautiful continent and our beautiful country of Liberia for what we have in America. As a matter of fact, it needs to be an extension from America to the African continent. So that's what we're talking about, family, the journey to the promised land. And now we're talking about reconnecting to the promised land.
Yeah, we'll play. The sound works on mine. I can't. I don't know why I can't hear it on yours.
Yes, after it plays, so it's in the recording. I can still just play the last set of it, and then we can just work on us wrapping it up. Because you can't give people too much right now. They'll you know as a matter of fact, they're gonna have to just take their time and play this back because you have covered a whole lot. And
Yeah,
literally, unfortunate, nothing what you have covered has ever been presented to any of us in school, or unfortunately, not much from our own scholars. Because a lot of times when I hear scholars, they're talking about Egypt, and I'm like, Egypt is a great history, but it's like let's get us more connected to something that's more realistic. Because Egypt will always be up to debate whether it's a black civilization or another civilization or a mixed civilization and
yeah,
many things. But one thing we can always say is that Liberia was a black civilization, or Liberia
exactly,
is a black civilization.
exactly. And no doubt about that. Ain't no ACS, no nothing like that. No United States government. That this was completely black men.
But
You know,
unfortunately, people still try to like derail the story and try to give the American colonization society all the credit. And I mean, yes, America should play a part in that reconnection, but it's like to give them all the credit is just unacceptable.
no, they do that to discredit Black America. That's all that
That's so I'm
is.
happy that we're not on YouTube Live where we have trolls derailing us and distracting us.
No, that's how that feels. That's what I feel right now. I'm like, every second I'm waiting for Elvis to come up and be like, no, no.
Yeah.
I feel so free right now.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about, man. Sometimes we just have to we just have to just not be on live. I know people probably just used to see me and you on live, but it's like we're telling people like, hey, it's hard for us to really get our word out and get our information out without looking up on the chat and seeing people attacking us or people coming on, making it seem like they're being a daring brother. And next thing you know, they just start off being cool. And next thing you know, they start going
Yeah,
in
they
on
just try to draw you in. Next thing you know, they put the knife in your back one night, you know?
you. So yeah, so that's it, family. So now they just, they're able to see the video, and then if they have any comments, they can just leave a comment, and we can communicate back with them. And if the comment is not acceptable, we can always just block them or delete them.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, no, we no, yeah. So I'm always telling people that we're serious about what we're doing, and we're just here to share with you real information, and we don't need to be distracted or derailed. This is the mission of what we have to get back to. And no matter how good you have it in America, we still have to build a nation of our own.
Exactly. And we start with Liberia.
Absolutely. So, family, we know we want more of us to get behind this project, get behind our reconnection, whether you travel with us or whether you just travel with someone else or whether you show up in the country. Uh, this has to be one of our bigger focus. I'm sure people are enjoying wonderful times in many other parts of Africa, but at the same time, too, you're not able to have what you have in those other parts of Africa as you can have in Liberia. And that's why we're just pushing it. You see this beautiful flyer, this beautiful energy. That's what we're connecting you to. Real serious work. And we need serious people to invest, connect, and work with us. And and forget about all the other things that you think you're gonna get, or we don't need to be derailed by reparations. For those who feel like that's the fight, go do what you need to do. And for those who feel like we need to work on restoring the glory of our ancestors, join us. Uh, it's uh, it's something that we need to just make happen, and we just need to just come together and make it work. So we're here sharing, so you can always reach out and connect with us. And let me go to your Amazon page. So there you go, Carla. What do you want to share about anyone that's interested in the book, ordering the book, and leaving comments
Well,
and
I'm
also giving their feedback?
we said we the link is broken to the Kindle, right? It goes to someplace else.
Oh yes, but the best thing for people to do is let's get back into ordering books
Books, yeah. Put this on your
and
bookshelf.
and we
Put this.
can we can always get them we can always get them a digital version. As a matter of fact, do you have a PDF version that you can always just
Years ago. Matter of fact, I got it on this computer. I said the motherboard's down. You know, the computer that's on the mother. Yeah, I got it on there, but the computer is broken. You know,
and that's a laptop?
no, it's a yeah, it's a laptop.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Trust me, man. You send that thing to me, I'll be like the FBI forensic people. I'll scrap the
Yeah,
information
I'm gonna
from
try.
there.
I'm try to get it to you by the end of the month. I'll send it to you. See what you can do with it.
Oh, absolutely. And but yes, family, that's the book details on there, and everything looks good, right? 222 pages. It's in
Yeah.
English, and they have the ISBN details. Is the book available anywhere else beyond Amazon?
Ex Libris.
Leave this. But this is where people go shopping anyway. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. It's the same price.
whether you're like a university student like 20 years ago, that's where we all used to order our books from.
Right. Yeah, we gotta get back to reading books, folks. We gotta become that literate people again. Enough TikTok and the idiots online on YouTube and whatnot. We gotta get back to reading. Once we start reading again, the mind will be cultivated. Reading cultivates the mind. You
Yeah.
know.
And you have given people more than enough information and more than enough breakdown and synopsis for them to just be clear about what the book is about, for them to just go ahead and get it and just get into the reading. And you never know, that person may be the person that end up just connecting you to the right screenwriter and people who need to just push this energy, because we do need to have more historic information as far as just the greatness of what we did. A lot of times, unfortunately, we have a lot of books and movies just, talking about our slave history. And, it's like you're also telling people that that's not the only history that we have, and
Exactly.
this
That's
shows that
exactly
we have
what
a
I'm going.
great history.
As I told you, we have a great history. It's not all everything's not slavery. and you find out with Africans, like, well, my ancestors weren't slaves here, so why should I dwell on slavery? So, like I said, I realized that also those people when they like when you talk about Liberians, I read they were like, man, most Liberians felt that they were the lucky one. By the time the 1970s rolled around, they were like, man, I hit the lottery, man. I was born in Liberia. I could have been born in Detroit, and I could have been born in Mississippi, but I was born here in Liberia. So I felt like, man, they were actually the lucky ones, that made it. That's why I said the one chapter called "The Children of God."
All right.
Children of God meant the African Americans, Caribbeans who were born of the slave descendants who were born back in Africa. I call them people the children of God, you know, because only God could save, like the pilgrims, all that people who were without a land, the children of Israel. Well, yeah, you're the children of God because when you don't have a land and you're persecuted and everything like that, you're in God's hand. So that chapter of the children of God was a tribute to the people who, descendants of the people who returned to Liberia, the children of God.
Oh, well, excellent, my brother. Excellent. Let me get out of screen sharing and just wanted to see if there's anything you wanted to just wrap up or just give a final thought on before we close out, and then we can just always continue on just another series of
Oh yeah, I got
Pan-Africanism
more
towards
questions.
nationhood.
Anybody the next time, if you got some more questions about the book and Liberian history, we can go over Liberian history. You keep uploading those things, and the message keeps getting out and whatnot. Because I'm always going to talk about the book. And why I built because everything I'm doing is why I wrote the book. Right, I'm just acting on following up on me writing this book. That was the first thing I had to do. You know, how can I talk about a country, right, when no one's ever written about? You know, so I had to do this book first. I had to do a lot of stuff. You saw that video I just played you on YouTube one night. I did that book the same. About I think I did that book. I did that video like about a few months before I published this book. Like 3 or 4 months before I published. Matter of fact, the book was being published, right? And I made that video. I made that video.
It shows 13 years ago.
Yeah. And so basically, so when the book was written, it was published 2014. Okay, yeah, 11 years ago. I made this right before while I was writing the book, and I published, and had the manuscript, and this was done before I actually published the book. So I went in. Those are just basically images I had in my head that I wanted to put. That like when you think about the time period, the 19th century, I want to give people a visualization of what life Liberia could have looked like back then. So that's what I said. While I was writing the book and I was writing the manuscript, that's what I made this video.
There you go, family. The journey or journey to the promised land. And that's
And I
it.
did this to tell people all the time. Look, we need more people. Like, let me give you an example: the Kansas Exodus, Nicodemus, Kansas. I'm waiting for somebody to write the book and the story on that. You know, that was a very interesting story. We need more people who are story writers and tellers of history, so we can tell our history. Our history is dying. People don't know who we are, because we let our history die. All these people talk about is the March on Washington, Martin Luther King, he got shot, Rosa Parks, or that. Our history is more than what's relevant to white people. I read this book, wrote this book because I'm like this. This book was basically me connecting to black people, in the black world. I didn't really write this book for, even though white people like it, and when they tell me, oh, it's a brilliant book, when it was not for them. It was for black people, because too much of our history, when you see people talking about, it's always them trying to get a response out of white people, and everything. You could tell when somebody's writing a book and they're being really kind to people and they're really conciliatory. They always add in white characters and favorable and whatnot, And I was like, I don't think that's necessary, I think we should tell it like it is. How do people feel about white people back then. I put that in a novel. People were really honest, about what they went through, back in this 19th century. Black people going through hell in America. So they felt a sort of way, you see that in the novel. The question is, and it goes against this whole narrative of that no matter what black people go through in America, they basically love it here. And I try to say like this, no, if white people think that they got some hold on us, that like this, Liberia proves that black people are capable of leaving them. And that's the one thing they always put in your head. Like if some white guy asked me, okay, you're gonna get white people, what are you gonna do about electricity? We're gonna do about running water. That's why at the same time we created the Black African Infrastructure Organization. Because we said, look, the only thing white people have is their infrastructure, their government and their systems and everything. Can we build our own system? If we want to build our own system, we need our own nation. Black people build a nation? But then I said, well, we did one in Liberia. Oh, that was a complete failure, man. Black people went over there, blah, blah, blah. When you look at Liberia, how it developed and everything like that, it was amazing. Martha Ricks gave a quilt to the Queen of England. And she told the Queen of England that her civilization in Liberia had caught up with the rest of the world. That was in 1890 at a World's Fair. She said our civilization of Liberia had caught up with the rest of the world. Our level of civilization, after all these years, we caught up with the rest of the world. So she was at quilt making. We brought quilt making back to Liberia. My grandma used to make quilts. And she stitched the Queen of England this beautiful quilt, Liberian quilt. That was put in a museum too. And so she said, yeah, our civilization had caught up. Liberia is proof that the black man, the whole idea of Liberia was to prove to the world that black people could govern themselves. Because before Liberia, even during Liberia, the idea that the black man was too backwards, too uncivilized to run a government. He's too primitive. There was one problem with that theory. You had Liberia. And that's what a lot of African countries will point to. Well, if you say, boss, you say we can't govern ourselves, we need you for the next 1,000 years, like Winston Churchill said, then how do you explain these people on the coast? Well, they're not Africans, they're American Liberians. See how it's his psychological game they're playing? When you do something spectacular, you're no longer black or African. But when you fail, oh, you're African now. But you do something significant, oh no, it was American Colonization Society, America, and whatnot. They always try to glorify and make America seem more important. That's why they're online right now. All these white kids online right now trying to Americanize Liberia. You know, so we're here to fight that.
There you go, man. And that's why you put together this beautiful organization, Black African Infrastructure.
I'm not giving up on it either, man. This organization was the greatest thing ever created. And the philosophy of the BAL is going to carry on to the rest of the world. I'm never giving up. We're not giving up. And we're going to like this. Like I said, it's all about money right now. Once we did all this. Think about this, Bomani. Publish a book, did an organization, did a tour with no money. I didn't get $2 million like Dr. Umar. Imagine if I had Dr. Umar money. Imagine what I'd be right now.
Exactly, man. So sometimes sometimes honestly, brother, be real with you, man. Sometimes people donate money to the wrong people.
Dollar Bill was saying it the other day. He said, Colin, you know what I'm saying? I will look at this, right? You know what the thing is? See, the reason why Kwame and all the people support Umar because they're like him. And the bottom line is they know that he's not going to be nothing and whatnot. He's not doing nothing and he's unaccountable. So that's what they want, you know, because they don't feel like they have to give. Like some people think that when I start getting monetized, they can just throw me a $10 and that's it. No, I'm sorry. I can't be bought off. Your little $10 donation, I appreciate it, but it ain't enough. I'm not Dr. Umar. I want to know, are you committed to this movement? I'm trying to build a movement. Your little $10 here, $20 here is not going to buy you salvation. You know, so people think they're going to buy me off, to silence me. That I'm going to go away and just be happy with a couple of nickels and dimes. I'm not Dime Samir, I'm not going to sell my soul to you. I'm not Umar Johnson. I'm not Afro think tank. I gotta do all these people like that. I'm saying what I'm saying right now. I believe that nation building, building Black African infrastructure, building an Afghanistan, turning Liberia into an Afghanistan, and all this stuff like this is a way. I want to get rid of all these colonial borders and all stuff like that, and redraw Africa's map altogether. Start all over again. Destroy all these countries and governments. Build it, tear it down, and build it back up. The shit that has to be torn down. Because it was built on lies, deception. You know, they propped up all these countries in Africa, right? And the bottom line, we're all in bondage right now because they propped up all these countries, and Africans basically just go along with it because they get a couple of nickels and dimes. No, we're gonna start with Liberia. That's our entryway into Africa. You know, that's our entry into Africa. You know, then one by one, all these colonial Uncle Tom countries are going to collapse and whatnot, and then we're going to have this thing called an African, an African state. That's what I believe in. People want to rock with me. You want to come with me. You want to come on this journey. You want revolution. Come on with it. Join the Association of African Americans for Liberia. You know, the number one thing on Facebook. I got it on my BAO site. Whatnot. I want to make that into a real organization. And when I get there next year, get a real organization, a 501c3, be on both sides of the Atlantic, whatnot. I'm gonna gather everybody's interest in Liberia into one big think tank, study group. We're gonna have conferences every friggin' week. You know, we're gonna get it popping. Conference calls every week, planning, strategy, think tanking. What can we do? We're gonna brainstorm.
But
That's how it
but y-
starts.
but yes, brother, great works, man. As you can see, these are excerpts from our tour book. Everything I just showed you recently is from this book right there. So I really appreciate you. I know I had to just like bother you a lot of times, but I appreciate you coming through because I really wanted to showcase your great works as far as the organization, Association of African Americans for Liberia, and also the Black African Infrastructure Organization. So, family, that's what we just showed. But they're part of this book. Kala inspired me to literally just come to Liberia. That other than that, I wouldn't be in Liberia, and that's being honest and directly. And we're saying that on a recorded call. And this is the book. You see the coat of arms there. And I would just always love this. I mean, it's something that I cherish. And this time when I wrote this book, this was our best book. And and when I look at it, the love of liberty brought us here. And that's why we keep on fighting to just get more people interested and open. And we've been going above and beyond, just figuring ways out. And we may get kicked down, but we get back up and just keep on fighting. So yes,
Exactly.
brother. So
Liberia is worth the fight. It's worth the fight.
that's the legacy. So we've shown many things from this book, and it's our first design, and we know we're going to only get better and better. And we just want people just to reach out and support us. We know there's a lot of haters out there and people that are non-believers, and we get it now. Most people are going to be that way, but we're looking for the people that are the believers and the one that see the vision to work with us. Because if we don't take advantage of this opportunity and just make sure that Liberia is for for us as a people, then other people are gonna come in and encroach. So one thing I can proudly say is that when we were around Liberia, we didn't see a whole bunch of this. It's not like going to like Tanzania or Kenya or Ghana or the South Africa or anywhere else on the African continent. We just see a ridiculous amount of this white domination. I
Yeah.
mean, we love all of those countries because it's a part of Africa, and we appreciate the people that have come in and create opportunities. But we want to focus to where we get more of us from the Black world to be the people that this run Liberia, and the people that are the investors and the business people. And we have enough wealth in Black America and other parts of the Black world to where that could be restored. But it's hard to get these things restored when people don't know the history. That's why Kala is so passionate about breaking it down. That's why I wanted to make sure that we get on here and talk uninterrupted.
Yeah.
When people see this video, they're like, these guys, were they on a YouTube live? And I was like, no, it wasn't a live video because we don't want to get distracted because it's sometimes the people don't understand it's hard to just keep focused when people sending derogatory message or coming up on
You
your
know, I get triggered, man. Real easy.
and it's hard not to, man.
They be saying some just crazy
And
shit, throwing me off.
yeah, yeah. So I'm happy we was able to just focus program and just appreciate your time, brother. And just wanted to find out if you just wanted us, to have any final thoughts and close out on any
Oh
information. We
yeah,
also put the book up.
I think that's it. I just want to tell people all the time, look, give Liberia a chance. That's
Yes,
all I would say.
absolutely.
Give Liberia a chance. Open your mind up. Don't believe what you heard and everything. Watch this video, then go do your own research and everything. You'll come to the same conclusion. Once you fall in love with this country the way I did when like I said, I was apprehensive. Then I went there. I said I absolutely fell in love with the country. I really did. I always loved Liberia, but when I actually went there, I was like, my God, man, this place is incredible. There's knowing that my ancestors built this place. It wasn't built by no colonialists. That's the whole thing. It wasn't built no British. It wasn't built by no French and everything like that. It was built by our people. I was like blown away. I said, "Yeah, this is my home. This is my homeland."
And it's the only country, family, the only country in Africa that has never been colonized or occupied. Now, people could say, hey, Ethiopia was never colonized, but
It was
Ethiopia was
occupied.
occupied. So, literally, this is the only country on the African continent that was literally never colonized and never occupied. That is, and then the country was built by our brothers and sisters from the African diaspora, mainly from beautiful Black America. That should mean a whole lot to us as a people, especially those of us living in America. And we have work to do. So, family, join the work, connect with us, and let's do this together, so we can create a better future for our children. For them to understand that you have an incredible country that is yours, that your ancestors built, and we can all be a great part of it, and we can all
And we
contribute
got options.
and give us the greatest option. And keep on talking about that beautiful coastline, brother. As a matter of
Well,
fact, I was watching a video with President Trump and President Bokai, and out of all of the other governments, other countries, it seemed like he was just he. I want to say the whole time he was talking, he was like thinking like, and he probably didn't doesn't know much about Liberia because just because you're president of one of the most dominated countries in the world, don't mean that you know everything. But I think he just started thinking that like, and people probably had to fill him in on many things, but he's probably like wondering like, what is this country and why is this country so beautiful and I don't know much about it. And I'm hoping that good things come from it. But appreciate our President Bokai for literally representing and not falling for any tricks and everything and
yeah,
just ground.
he's a senior statesman, Boca. You know,
Absolutely. And I would say a wiser man than, and very humble.
yeah.
So all Liberians should be proud of, the leader that they have in the country, and we all look forward to the next few years. He's only been in government for several months, and looking forward to this us all working together and this being restoring this beautiful glory, brother. And everybody should be excited. But Kala, just appreciate your time and let me stop the screen sharing. And brother, let's close out, and then we can always connect and share more of this beautiful Pan-Africanism towards nationhood series as we.
Anytime you look, I'm free every night. So anytime you want to do this, I'm here. You're up, I'm up.
There you go, family. So appreciate your family. Leave any comments, send us any message. I'll put all the details in the description and just communicate with us. Reach out to us if you have good connects of Liberians that want to work with us, because we're not going to know everybody. So we always depend on the relationships of people connecting with us with people, and that's part of what we do. Uh, we support black-owned business, we invest in black-owned business, and we support each other. We have this incredible network. So, family, on that note, let's close out, and the journey continues. And we look forward to seeing you in Liberia with us, and look forward to you reaching out and working with us, because right now, this is the most important time for us to do this because we may not have another chance. And right now, the best thing to do, like we always talk about, strike while the iron is hot. And each one teach one. And what's the other great saying? Strike while iron is hot, and
Get in where you fit in.
it's so many things we can say. It's what I'm always remembering. Strike while iron is hot, which is the greatest one. And right now, the fire is hot in Liberia, and Liberia
Yeah.
is more popular and open to the future.
Yep. It's already eclipsed Sierra Leone. It's already eclipsed Gambia. Liberia's on the map. Liberia's hot right now. It's
They
really
go
hot.
famine, and all we got is us. So we can't expect anyone else to come around and do anything for us because all we have seen is this all other nations and races in the world just taking advantage of us as a people. So this is one thing that we can all get behind and do together.
Yep.
And I'm just trying to remember that saying. It's two of them I'm always thinking about.
It probably come to you after the end of life.
Oh yeah, man. Unfortunately, man, it's one of those things.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm sure you have a few final things you want to share.
Yeah, just what you call I don't know when I'm gonna be back on YouTube. It's probably gonna be sometime at the end of September. I might come back. Then when I come back, it's gonna be mostly interviews and if I do lives and when I'll be careful about who gets up on there because it's gonna be crucial. The last few months of this tour and everything like that, we don't need no distractions and like that. Everyone, 90% of people are gonna be favor of this tour or somebody that's they're that we just can't waste time. Can't waste time with anybody anymore. This is too serious. You know, People got to start acting like life depends on it because it does. So I can't take somebody joking around, fooling around with this and whatnot. We live in a serious world, you know, and so like I said, I want to see black men start taking life seriously. If I could do nothing else, I just want to see black men think more than just partying and chasing ass and all this stuff like this. Right? What do you believe in? That's of course. Let me say this right in closing. When I look at other groups of people, right? I talked to the young Zionist boy, whatever, like that. He's reading his Torah and everything like that. And look at there's a video I want you to look at. Sorry, Bonnie. Leo Fakowitz, Levi Fakowitz, Levi Fakowitz, right? Is a Jewish composer, right? But when you hear him talk, his sing, right? He's talking about the beauty of Israel and stuff like this, right? He believes in something from his soul. When I hear Russians sing the Volga Boatman, that's a story. That's a powerful thing. Like people are like, "Colin, man, you always like all these foreign." Yeah, I do. I like the Japanese national anthem. I listen to all the stuff like that. Why? Because it's a story of a people. Where's our story? Where's your story? What do you hold sacred as black people? What do you love? What would you die for? What would you kill for? What do you preserve? You can't tell me it's all about a reparations check or some FBA nonsense and everything. You guys show me where's your land. Everybody else has a homeland, a land, some place and whatnot that they know that nobody can get to. Everybody has to have a homeland. Everybody has to have something other than this. If you let the white man tell you that, like I said, this is what white people are so confused right now. Where they're always like, "Oh yeah, we want to wait." I don't care because when you got in your heart that you want a nation of your own, you want to be among your own people, that doesn't bother you anymore. You're free. Now, those of you who are not free, you're freaking out right now. Oh, America's becoming racist under the Trump era. We don't care because if you were doing what you're supposed to be doing by building Africa, this wouldn't even phase you. That's all I want to tell people all the time. So therefore, people are like, well, Kali, you just convinced me. What can I do? Start with the country that you should know about. And if you don't know, I will teach you. Start with Liberia. That was the answer right there. They always say the riddle, a conundrum is the answer to a riddle. You know, what do you do If like you're facing racism, white supremacy, oppression, everything's bad, whites, whatever like that, the answer, Liberia. Liberia's always been the answer to the riddle. You know, that was always the answer to the riddle. And so, therefore, there's no other way to put it to you. Liberia is the answer to the riddle. And so, therefore, as we basically resurrect Liberia, I'm interested to understand why people would have anything against this, whatever. Why would you choose, like the Jews? They have the state of Israel. Sure, they could enjoy themselves being Americans and they play the game, but they got that Israel homeland. The Chinese have China. All these other people got a homeland. They got some place that they go to. Catholics got the Vatican. Japanese got Japan. Everybody has something that they cherish, a sacred place that you can't be a part of. Like I said, when I was growing up, all my Jewish friends and whatnot, they played with basketball and whatnot, but at a certain point in time, said, "No, well, we're going to do this over here. Can I come? No, 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 no. You got to go home." They're telling you it's time for you. There's no space in Black America. Think about it. The only space you have is when you talk to me and Bomani on these shows because we only talk to Black people. But some of you would rather want me and Bomani to be like a chaotic truth, having white guys up here and all this stuff like this, talking to us and talking in our business and whatnot, and talking, discussing what you want us to be Afro dumbass, and do all these other people like this. No, this is your safe space. This is why we talk Black issues, Black politics, everything. We're creating a safe space for you. And so part of that safe space is saying that yes, we're going to do it big. We're going to have a safe space is our tours, Africa for African tours. This is something you could be a part of, but your white friend, your friend may be white, but you have to know when to say, Rick or Brad, something. Yeah, I'm going on a tour with Colin Bomani. Can I come? Can I come? No, I don't think so. And if he doesn't respect that, then he's not your friend. If he doesn't respect that, we're not, this is a problem with having white friends. We're not. If a white friend understands, well, yeah, okay, he's going ready, he's getting with his brothers and everything. Back in the days, white guys understood that. They understood they had a role to play with you. They play basketball with you, whatever like that. But a certain amount of time, you're going back to your Black thing. Whatever happened with that. Now, because they listen to our music, they listen to our style, everything like that, they feel like they could be part of who we are. That we don't have anything to ourselves. This right here, this Black nationalist movement is the last thing we have. If we lose this, that's it. To make it real, now we have a country that we can operate in, connect to. It ain't like the Black nationalism back in the day. They were talking about Black nationalism, but they ain't have no country. Now we have one. We done the tours, or a novel. We did all homework. We're connecting on the ground. We connect with government. We're doing this. The Black nationalist movement is going to live again. Anyway, Maya, that's all I got to say. You know, and
Yes, family, I appreciate you joining us. So we're closing out and just looking forward to those who are interested in what we're doing to reach out with us so we can build this together and keep it strong. And let's keep striking while the iron is hot, and that will lead us to our nation building efforts. So once again, family, this is Bomani and Kala Genesis here on Pan Africanism towards nationhood, and looking forward to connecting more of you with Liberia as we look forward to restoring our glory. The journey continues.
all right. Good night. I gotta go to bed.